This is Sony's brand new alpha concept camera, the Sony a7C. Basically, it's a full frame camera in an APS-C camera body. Okay, let's talk about the A7C. It essentially is an improved A7 III in a A6600 camera body. It's definitely thicker than the A6600, like there's a bit of girth to it, and feels pretty robust, to be honest. But in a small factor form, it is a full frame camera. Bam!
Okay. Whenever you're
Come
ready.
on! I have a deadline! All right, here we go. Dang plane. All right, here we go. What are we talking about? All right, let's talk about some of the key features of the A7C. It has, of course, a flip-out screen, a full articulating flip-out screen, so very nice. So perfect for vloggers or if you want to use this camera in studio. On the side is where all the ports are. Let me go ahead and close up the screen. And unlike the A7 III, which has terrible doors, the doors for the ports are actually pretty good and sturdy. I kind of have to I just cut my fingernails, and so it's kind of hard for me to open the port doors. All right, there we go. So there are all the ports. Starting at the top, you have a mic jack. In the middle is where you'll find the SD card slot, which supports UHS 2, very nice. And on the bottom is where you'll find a headphone jack, a micro HDMI port, and a USB-C port. And they close up just like that. Although the SD card slot, you kind of have to close the door and then lock it to secure it in place. And if you are wondering if the mic jack will get in the way of the flip out screen, let's go ahead and test that out right now. All right, so I got the DD-D4 Duo, mic jack is attached, and now I'm going to flip out the screen. Nice, doesn't get in the way. Although if you do have an HDMI cable attached to the camera, you're not gonna be able to flip it out as easy. It just gets in the way. Even the door gets in the way. Like you can't really flip it out fully. You might just have to pull it back and just position it however you want and then put it back in place. Not the end of the world, but just wanted to point that out. All right, let's move on to the back. Definitely different to all the previous cameras, but also similar in many ways. Obviously, there is the articulating flip out screen, which also has touchscreen capabilities, but you'll notice this groove near the top of the camera, which makes it really easy to flip out the screen. Also in the back, you'll see in the top center is the menu button. Moving on to this side is the EVF viewfinder, very similar to the Sony APS-C camera bodies. And then on the right side is where all the other back buttons are. On the top is the aperture wheel, so you just move it to the left or right to change aperture. Below that is the autofocus on and off button. Below that is the function button. Below that is the back wheel, which you can use to change the shutter speed, as well as the familiar features that most Sony cameras have, if not all Sony cameras have. Let's see, display, ISO, exposure, and drive speed. Yeah, they're all the same. And then of course you have your playback button as well as your trash button, which can also be used as a custom button. All right, let's bring it to the top of the camera. It's a little bit different than most Sony cameras. You have your shutter button over here, which has this nice silver surface. There is a big red record button over here, and so the record button on the A7 III is located at the back, which I really liked, but I also like the fact that the record button is on the top. That's nice. You got the exposure wheel in the corner, very similar to the A7 III. You've got your mode dial for all the different modes of the camera, and then you have the hot shoe, which is in the center of the camera. For those of you wondering, the A7C does take the Sony Z batteries or Z batteries, depending on where you're from, which is awesome because now I can use the same batteries for my A7S III and my A7 III if I were to get this camera. As far as weather sealing goes, yes, the A7C is weather sealed. So feel free to take this out to the desert, toss it in the sand. You don't have to worry about sand getting into your camera. Just kidding, don't do that. I mean, it's weather sealed, but don't do that with any camera. So that is the exterior of the camera. Let's go ahead and talk about the insides of the A7C. So inside the camera is a 24.2 megapixel backside illuminated sensor. It has a Bionz X image processor, so exactly the same as the A7 III. Also the same as the A7 III is the same autofocusing system with the addition of real-time eye autofocus tracking for photos and video. Very nice. The ISO goes up to 204,800 with 14 stops of dynamic range if you shoot in S-Log2, S-Log3, and HLG. You also have the 5-axis stabilization that we all know. It has the same color science as the A7S III and the Sony ZV-1, which makes this camera really perfect to pair with the A7S III. The A7C also shoots at 10 frames per second for photos, and as far as video goes, it shoots 4K video up to 30 frames per second and 120 frames per second in HD. No, it doesn't shoot in 10-bit, it is an 8-bit camera. camera. 10-bit is for the A7S III, but the A7C is really an entry-level full-frame camera, which is why this camera doesn't have 10-bit video. Not the end of the world, but not too bad for a full-frame entry-level camera. All right, well, I don't have the official box with me, but in the box you can expect the following things. You have the Sony Z battery. You got a pretty thick USB-C cable. You also have the camera strap, of course, and something different and new is the new power brick, or power square. There's a normal USB port at the bottom, and then you have the outlet prongs. You can just flip out, just plug into a wall, and then plug it into your camera. So yeah, that's new. Okay, let's talk about the pros and cons of the A7C. Now, in order, here are my favorite things about this camera. I love the size of the A7C. Like, I've always wanted a full frame version of the A6500 when I had that camera. Now, this camera is obviously a little bit thicker, but the fact that it's a full frame camera in an APS-C camera body, like, that's really cool. So I really dig the smaller form factor. The second thing I love about this camera is the fact that there's a flip out screen. That should be a given. Like, flip out screen should be a standard for all cameras these days, and so love that. The third thing I love about this camera is the color science. It's really good, and the same color science featured in the A7S III and the Sony ZV-1. Definitely will make my whole life easier when color correcting and color grading in post. I wanted to like get it in before the car drove by.
You almost did.
Almost. You should like put out your hand and be like, stop!
I know, just put out cones.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the cons of this camera. They're not like totally bad, but things I wish Sony could have improved on. You have the same menu system that's on the ZV-1, the A7 III, same exact thing. You don't get that new cool menu system that's seen in the A7S III. Like, that menu system looks really cool. And the last thing that I wish Sony included in the A7C are dual card slots. You just get a single SD card slot, which is okay, especially for a full-frame entry-level camera, but I don't know. I feel like dual SD card slots are like a standard these days. So yeah, those are the only things I don't like about this camera. So being that it's similar to the A7 III with better battery life, new color science, smaller form factor, and just overall better than the A7 III, is it actually worth upgrading to? Like, should you sell your A7 III to get the A7C? Maybe not. I mean, if you're into photography and not so much videos, you might want to just hold on to your A7 III. But when it comes to video, it might be worth looking into. Here's why. For one, color science is huge for me. Like, I don't want to spend so much time in post trying to match the colors from my A7 III, Sony ZV-1, A7S III. If I am going to be using multiple cameras, it makes sense to use cameras with the same color science. So if my A7S III is my main camera, and my B camera is the A7C, and then my Sony ZV-1 is my backup camera, that's 3 cameras with the same color science that I can easily match in post. Here's what I think. I think the A7C is a really good backup camera. It's a really good B cam and really good for studio work. Like, if I were to leave one camera in my studio at all times, but I want that full frame look, the A7C would be it. Cameras like the A6600 and the A6400 totally work as well. But if you do want that full frame look and you want to use your full frame lenses, then the A7C is something worth considering. Again, if you're happy with your A7 III, totally keep it. But if you are in the market for a full frame camera with better color science that's similar to the A7 III, then this guy is your guy. Or girl. It could be a girl. I don't know. All right, well, that is the A7C, and if you want to check it out for yourself, then make sure to click the link in the description below. Huge thanks to Sony for sending me this camera. I actually really like it, and if you're looking for your very first full-frame camera and you want to go into the Sony ecosystem, then definitely check out the Sony A7C. Wow, so many cameras out this season. So many cameras. I can't handle it. All right, guys, I'm out of here. Thanks for watching. Thumbs up, subscribe, hit the bell buttons down below, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next one.